People think power is about talent, but it is usually about timing, nerve, and the willingness to punish hesitation. You can be brilliant and still lose the throne, and you can be underrated and still win everything. This episode is not another history lesson where you clap for the loudest hero. It is a diagnosis. We are going to use Liu Bang's rise and the collapse of Xiang Yu and the tragedy of Han Xin to expose a truth modern people avoid. Your success depends less on what you want to be and more on what you can tolerate doing when you are afraid. Welcome to the hidden self. Today we are talking about Liu Bang's talents, but not the romantic version. We are talking about his decisive judgment, his cold rational reading of human character, his cruelty when it serves survival, and the thing most people refuse to admit they need, the ability to act without waiting for moral permission slips from your own ego. Because here is the uncomfortable pattern. Xiang Yu was capable of battlefield glory, but he carried a fragile identity. He needed to look like a certain kind of hero. Han Xin was courageous, but he carried internal contradiction. He wanted loyalty and wanted freedom at the same time, as if the world would negotiate with his feelings. And Liu Bang built his life on something simpler. He treated people like resources, yes, but he also treated reality like reality. He did not confuse his image with destiny. So let's begin with the part that will sting. Not everyone loses because they lack skill. Many people lose because they cannot decide. They cannot cut the cord. When you watch Liu Bang, you see a man with almost no patience for overthinking, not because he is fearless, because he is unwilling to obey the internal committee that keeps you safe. In his early days when he was just a small leader, he escorted prisoners forced into labor, and during the journey some of them escaped. Think about that moment. A normal person would panic. A responsible person would tighten security. A submissive person would try to regain control through threat. But Liu Bang did something stranger and more revealing. He opened the gate, he let the prisoners go, and he told them, in effect, you can go ahead, I'm going too. It wasn't a childish stunt, it was a psychological statement. He understood something that most managers and lovers never learn. If you run your life like everything depends on controlling other people, you will always be late. Control becomes your religion. And religion always delays action. This is what makes Liu Bang dangerous. He does not wait until he feels confident. He decides, then adapts. He uses urgency as a tool. He doesn't ask the mind to approve first. Modern people do the opposite. You see it in relationships. Someone says the wrong thing, and suddenly they start building a case instead of moving. They want the other person to admit fault before they take any step. They wait for the apology, like it's a court order. But real power is different. Real power is moving before your emotions get permission. Liu Bang, a battlefield scale, is what happens when you stop bargaining with fear. Xiang Yu, by contrast, was a hero who could not tolerate the shame of acting dirty, even when survival demanded it. That's where the throne gets stolen. Because let's talk about the decisive moment that decides everything. The banquet, the hesitation, the near assassination. Xiang Yu had the opportunity to kill Liu Bang early, but he delayed. He told himself he was a hero, and he could not handle the reputation cost. He was not just slow, he was trapped. He had built an identity around honor, and honor became an inhibitor. And you know what that means psychologically? It means you are not protecting morality. You are protecting your self-image. You want to be seen as decent, even if your choice condemns you. You want to preserve the aesthetic of virtue, even if it burns your future. So he hesitated. He didn't pull the knife when it mattered. Then the knife was pulled on him later. Now look at Han Xin. Han Xin was the opposite of Xiang Yu in style, but not in core weakness. Han Xin was cautious, strategic, and capable. But his inner world was divided. He had resentment and he had temptation. He had loyalty and he had calculation. When the opportunity to defect arrived, he didn't do it. And then once the net tightened around his life, he started acting like a cage made him furious rather than like a decision made him safe. This is the tragedy. Some people only become bold after it is too late. They don't take control when they still have options. They wait until the situation forces them into a corner, and then they call that stubbornness. Bravery. It's not bravery. It's mismanaged timing. Han Xin's problem was not that he lacked talent. His problem was that he confused emotion with strategy. He could justify hesitation right up until hesitation destroyed him, and the political world does not reward sincere indecision. It punishes it. If you want the modern translation, it is this: your relationships, your career, your money, your identity, they are not ruined by one catastrophic event. They are ruined by 1,000 tiny delays where you refused to act until you felt morally clean. And the moment morality became a performance, you started losing. This is the first uncomfortable truth of Liu Bang's talent. He did not romanticize decision-making. He treated decision like a weapon. But decision alone is not enough. Anybody can act impulsively and call it confidence. Liu Bang's real edge was not speed. It was judgment. He understood people. He knew what each person was capable of, what they feared, what they wanted, and where their character would betray them under pressure. That kind of reading does not come from reading books. It comes from observation. It comes from learning the psychology of betrayal without needing to be betrayed first. For a leader to succeed, you need more than courage. You need a terrifying ability to predict human behavior. And Liu Bang had it. He was accused of being rational and even cruel, but what people forget is that cruelty in politics is often a byproduct of clarity. When you see a threat pattern, you don't waste time pretending the threat will magically become harmless because you wish it so. Han Xin was not trustworthy. The story is clear in its logic. Han Xin betrayed a previous loyalty. If he could betray one master, why would he not betray another when the incentives change? People who want to be moral still try to believe that loyalty is a fixed trait like eye color, but loyalty is conditional. Loyalty survives only when the cost of betrayal becomes higher than the reward. So Liu Bang looked at Han Xin and saw a conditional loyalty. He also saw something else. Han Xin wanted a reward without the risk. Han Xin wanted to be rewarded for good service, while still keeping the inner permission to defect if the wind changed. That is not leadership. That is a fantasy, and Liu Bang refused to live inside fantasies. He didn't just trust results. He trusted character patterns. He used power to prevent future betrayal rather than to recover after betrayal. Now let's get into the next layer, the part where most viewers get defensive. You are going to hear me say something that makes people uncomfortable. In order to rise, you need to be able to treat people as instruments, not in a cartoon villain way, in a strategic reality way. If you cannot do that, you will constantly be negotiating with your conscience, and your conscience will negotiate you into failure. Liu Bang's talent was not that he was soft, he could be harsh, but his harshness was selective and purposeful, not reactive. It wasn't cruelty for pleasure, it was cruelty for stability. Look at how he used talent. It was almost obscene in its pragmatism. He gathered people from every kind of background: nobles, scholars, commoners, craftsmen, thieves, butcher types, even people who were socially despised. Modern people do the same thing but with different masks. You might not reject someone for class reasons. You reject them for status reasons. You think your standards are taste. You call your prejudice discernment. Liu Bang had no interest in status purity. He cared about usefulness and timing. If someone had the skill, he saw it. If someone had the courage, he saw it. If someone had the loyalty pattern, he measured it. Then he adjusted. This is why his network became unusually strong. He didn't just hire good people. He assembled an ecosystem. You see it in how complementary roles formed. Someone thinks, someone plans, someone commands armies, someone governs. That is how the political machine becomes self-sustaining. It doesn't rely on one genius. It relies on a structure of intelligence and execution. In modern terms, this is the difference between ambition and competence architecture. Ambition is a speech. Competence architecture is a system that keeps working even when your mood changes. But here is where it gets darker. Liu Bang also understood that not everyone will stay loyal once they feel safe. So he used punishment, not because he enjoyed it, but because he taught reality to the room. There is a reason authoritarian systems exist. They are not dreams. They are responses to human nature under uncertainty. People do not behave reliably when incentives shift. So regimes create deterrence. Liu Bang is presented as an emperor who could be generous, and that generosity is real. But the same person could execute, and execute decisively. He could carry people emotionally as family and then kill them if the political risk demanded it. And yes, that is cruel, but it is also rational. The lesson modern viewers must face is this: you cannot build stability on sentimental trust alone. You can build beauty on it, maybe, but not stability. Now consider the story of Fan Kuai and the way Liu Bang treated him. They were close. They survived together. They earned loyalty. And yet when betrayal or disobedience threatened the political goal, Liu Bang still made the killing decision. Fan Kuai was not just a subordinate. He was like a brother. But brotherhood did not become a shield against state logic. It became part of the tragedy. Liu Bang's ruthlessness wasn't hatred. It was prioritization. He did not allow personal affection to derail the survival calculus. This is why he could win. Because Xiang Yu, for all his battlefield intensity, couldn't tolerate certain kinds of action. He was too focused on the story of heroism. He believed that if you do things honorably, outcomes will follow. Outcomes do not follow honor. Outcomes follow leverage. That is the reason Xiang Yu repeatedly hesitated when he had power. He feared the reputational dirt of killing an opponent in a compromised setting. He did not want to dirty his hands. He wanted the universe to respect his morality. And when you demand respect from the universe, you get punished by reality. You can see this in his obsession with recognition. He needed to be the kind of hero who doesn't do dishonorable things. But if your identity requires that you do less than what keeps you alive, your identity becomes a liability. This is the psychological trap. You confuse virtues with constraints. In modern life, this looks like people refusing to set boundaries because it feels mean. They refuse to enforce consequences because it might seem toxic. They refuse to audit their own motives because that would be admitting they were wrong. They keep behaving as if the world owes them fairness because they can't handle the shame of acting strategically. Shame is the hidden currency. People pay it to avoid looking bad. And that currency buys them nothing. Now, let's escalate into the part that really exposes the hidden self. Liu Bang was not just decisive, he was also willing to admit mistakes publicly. That is rare for leaders, and it is rarer among people who think they are strong. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Many people do not actually want growth. They want the feeling of being right. They want to preserve status in their own mind. Admitting error feels like social death. So instead, they double down. You've seen it in managers. You've seen it in couples. Someone makes a choice, it fails, and they keep defending it because the defense is the identity. They are not defending a strategy. They are defending their self-worth. Liu Bang did the opposite. When he misjudged something, he acknowledged it. There is a moment where he made a wrong call, got trapped in a disastrous strategic situation, and then afterward he chose to honor someone who had warned him. He removed the myth of his own genius. This is why he survived. Not because he was never wrong, but because he was capable of letting wrongness be wrongness, not evidence of personal inferiority. That is the hidden self-skill. Can you separate your identity from your decisions? Most people cannot. They treat a wrong decision as an insult to their intelligence, so they cling to it. They call it loyalty to their vision. They call it commitment. But it's just ego panic. Liu Bang's willingness to revise his understanding created an emotional culture where learning was possible. Learning makes you dangerous because it turns mistakes into advantage rather than trauma. And that turns the second talent into something even more powerful, adaptability. Now we shift to the third and most psychologically revealing theme, how Liu Bang dealt with people he had reason to execute, but sometimes didn't. This is not about kindness. It is about rational cruelty mixed with calculated restraint. He executed some enemies because political stability demanded it, but he also released certain captives because the evidence cleared them, because the moral cost was outweighed by the political benefit, because the deterrence could be maintained without destroying everyone in sight. You can call this mercy, you can call it strategy. The truth is it was both, because in a stable system, mercy is a resource. It creates legitimacy, it makes the machine less brittle. Modern people rarely understand this. You see them in small conflicts like workplaces and friendships, and they treat every boundary crossing as a moral emergency. They demand punishment because punishment makes them feel righteous. But righteous punishment is often useless. It doesn't fix the system, it just teaches the room to fear you instead of respect you. Liu Bang did not seek fear as his only instrument. He sought loyalty rooted in predictable outcomes. He understood something cynical but true. When people believe that competence and fairness exist inside the system, they cooperate. When people believe only chaos exists, they hide, they plot, and they betray. So he built predictability using both generosity and threat. This is where Xiang Yu failed again. Xiang Yu respected heroes, and that sounds like honor, but psychologically it becomes selectiveness that blocks control. If you only treat certain people with respect because you admire their vibe, you can't manage the wider risk. A system cannot run on admiration. A system runs on incentives and deterrence. And Xiang Yu, trapped in his hero identity, was often unable to use the full spectrum of power. He could be brave, he could be loud, he could be theatrical, but he couldn't be consistently strategic. When the emotional weather changed, his decisions changed with it. That is why his heroism eventually became aesthetic only. It kept working as performance until performance was not enough. Now, let's talk about identity, because that is the hidden self-theme that ties everything together. Liu Bang had an identity that allowed him to be pragmatic. He was willing to be underestimated. He was willing to be called a brute. He was willing to act without needing to feel pure. That matters because people who are obsessed with identity cannot act freely. They need the world to confirm their story. They need applause. They need to feel the good guy. When applause stops, they become unstable. Xiang Yu needed recognition as a hero. He could not tolerate losing face. He could not tolerate being forced into tactical compromise. So he made decisions that protected his self-image rather than his survival. Han Xin needed a different identity. He wanted to be both the loyal subordinate and the future master. He wanted time to become the perfect moment to betray without being branded as a traitor, but time doesn't negotiate. Time demands cost. Han Xin's inner contradiction made him vulnerable. He hesitated until the window closed. Then he tried to reclaim agency, but the problem is that reclaiming agency after the net tightens becomes desperate violence, not strategic leverage. So the throne went to someone who had the psychological flexibility to keep choosing. That's Liu Bang, and now, the darkest takeaway for you, the viewer sitting in 2026 with your own private chaos. You do not stay stuck because the world is unfair. You stay stuck because you are loyal to an internal story that keeps you safe from shame. You delay conversations because you want to be the respectful person, even when your silence is destroying your relationship. You avoid job moves because you want to keep the identity of being the loyal employee, even when loyalty is turning into slow self-erasure. You refuse to audit your spending because admitting you spent money badly would make you feel pathetic. You call it staying true. It is not staying true. It is protecting ego panic. Liu Bang would not let ego panic run his life. He would ask one brutal question: what is the risk if I wait? Then he would act. And when he was wrong, he fixed it. He honored advice. He revised his approach. He made decisions that created stability even if they looked cold from outside. Most people want a life where they are admired and safe at the same time. That life does not exist. You can either be admired by strangers while you quietly die in the wrong direction, or you can be ruthless about your own trajectory. Ruthless about your habits, ruthless about your excuses, ruthless about the relationships that feed your denial. Now here is your call to action, and it is not cute. For the next 7 days, stop asking whether your feelings approve of your choices. Ask what reality demands. Ask what your fears are preventing you from doing. Ask what decision you have been postponing because you want to remain the good person in your own narrative. Write down the one conflict you have been avoiding. Write down the one financial decision you have been postponing. Write down the one boundary you have been refusing to enforce. And then make one move within 24 hours that reduces future risk. Not a symbolic move, an actual move. Change a plan, send a message, cancel something, apply somewhere, start the budget, end the conversation. Or, if you already know you were wrong, admit it out loud, without theater, without bargaining for forgiveness you do not deserve. Because here is the hard truth that Liu Bang teaches. People rise when they stop protecting their image and start protecting their outcome. And yes, this may feel cruel. It may feel like you are betraying a softer version of yourself, but the version of you that cannot act decisively will always be available to comfort you right before you lose again. So get up, stand up. Stop negotiating with hesitation. Stop worshiping moral performance. Stop treating your identity like a museum you must preserve. Build a system that acts. Admit mistakes fast. Read people accurately. And when it is time to decide, decide. If you want change, you do not need more inspiration. You need more nerve, more clarity, and fewer lies.